Good evening, everybody. Welcome to a very special episode of the Golf Gambling Podcast, exclusively only on YouTube. I am Steve Schirmer of the Golf Gambling Podcast, and we are going to bring you another edition of me completely nerding out to topography and agronomy and elevation changes. And we're going to go through every single hole at LACC. I've been doing this a couple times over the last month or so, mostly because we've had a couple new golf courses. And I figure, why not just share with you guys the way that I tend to break everything down by going through Google Earth and doing a lot of measurements and a lot of going through every single nitty-gritty detail to help and try and figure out what types of guys I should bet on. It's the first thing I do when I go to every single tournament. So maybe if I can share a little bit of insight with you guys, you can get a little bit of a better feel about how this golf course is going to go. And you can bet smarter. And I think that's really important this week because, as some of the reasons I'll talk about in a little bit, there's a lot of mystery to this place. So, if you watch my Oak Hill video, if you watch my Canadian Open video, which I kind of got the Canadian Open kind of wrong, is what it is. I think a lot of people did. But if you haven't seen this before, here's essentially what I'm going to be doing in this video. So, we're going to do a lot of tee shot analysis. Basically, what I'm going to show you is where these guys are teeing off and some of the elevation changes. And that's really important this week because there's a lot of tee shots that either go dramatically downhill to make a really long hole play a lot shorter, or they play dramatically uphill, which is going to affect how far the ball carries in the air. And more specifically, where it ends up on the fairway for your approach shot, or if the fairway is kind of undulated, where it ends up. I'm also going to show you a little bit, just some data I gather from watching the Walker Cup highlights from 2017. Obviously, if you have followed that tournament a little bit, there were a lot of really elite players on that team, like Scotty Scheffler, Kyle Morikawa, Will Zalatoris, a couple other guys like Doc Redman or Cam Champ. They're all on there. Unfortunately, look, this was FS1 and this was 6 years ago, and there was only 2.5 hour window. It's match play. The US trounced GBI. So sometimes matches didn't go all the way 18. Most of the time that coverage kind of focused a lot on the back nine. So a lot of Walker Cup stuff is that I saw that can help you for approach shots and how they kind of did on that hole, what their strategies. It's going to be mostly in the back nine. For the front nine, though, unfortunately, it's kind of just wine measurements and a couple other things we'll get to a little bit. I'm also going to do some green side analysis, too. Basically, just taking some of the USGA videos to show you how the greens are contoured, where the greens kind of fall off, where the barranca is, where you want to miss, where you don't want to miss. And then also the last thing. So I subscribe to something called the Quadrilateral. It is from Jeff Shackelford. He is a golf architect and historian, and he assisted in the restoration of LACC. So he knows this golf course in and out. He knows every single little contour or ridge or plateau, everything about this place. And for the last couple of months or so, he's basically doing a hole by hole, huge description of it. Mostly in text. So I'm going to be giving you kind of the high level points he's been talking about in those newsletters, mostly US Open strategy, what the hole is, some of the more nitty gritty details. And then I'll actually show you what he's talking about visually on the screen in front of you using Google Earth. So what is this video not going to cover, though? Well, it's not going to cover the details of the restoration. That would take probably 3 hours. And honestly, at this point, you don't really care about it, what it was and what it is now. It doesn't matter for the LACC, LACC in the 2023 US Open. We're playing with the golf course as is. We have not seen this in its old state. We saw this in its new state for the Walker Cup. I will point to a couple things that may have changed from the Walker Cup in 2017 to now, mostly with rough that the USGA has decided to grow into the fairways. I don't really love it, but that's how they want to run this championship. And it's also not going to cover any real estate. I mean, you guys know there's a lot of really nice houses in Beverly Hills around the entire property. There's going to be a lot of clickbait and content around that stuff. This is not going to be this tonight. So if you were looking forward to that, I'm sorry. This is going to be kind of a dense video. It's going to be a lot of information, but hopefully it's going to help you. I don't particularly care about the real estate around the property. It's just going to be what the golf course is, where they hit approach shots from, difficulty of it, some of the unknowns about this place that I'm still trying to wrap my head around, and we'll go from there. So why don't we get right into it? Just some general information about LACC before we get into the really nitty-gritty details. So this is going to be a par 70. It is 7,381 yards on the scorecard. This is all from the GCSAA, by the way. When I actually add up the yardages from the US Open website, it came to about 7,423 yards, though. So about a 40-yard difference, but they're going to play with tee boxes every single day, kind of like they did at Chambers Bay. Like some days the tee box might be 50 yards ahead of where they teed it off the previous day. So there's a lot of flexibility with this golf course. I'll show you a couple of spots where in the Walker Cup, they were really flexible with the yardages and kind of, threw guys, a curveball day to day. The reason why it's a par 70, though, there are 5 par 3s on the golf course and only 3 par 5s. So kind of like last week with Oakdale, it's a par 72, 7,200 yards, but it's because it had only 3 par 3s. So essentially, with this golf course, because the extra par 5, if you basically put on another 200 yards onto one of the par 3s, you're looking at a par 71 and almost 7,600 yards. So just on its surface, really, really, really long golf course. Now, it's deceptively long because there are some holes that play dramatically downhill, but there are some complicating factors based on the weather and some turf conditions I'll get to a little bit that really makes it kind of unknown how long this place is really going to play. It could play really short like it did at Chambers Bay, where it was just really baked down. The ball just ran forever and ever and ever. Or it might play pretty long like it did at Erin Hills, and it didn't play quite as firm as what it was kind of intended to do, and it played a little longer. So we'll see about that. As far as the agronomy goes, so the greens are bent grass. They are going to roll about 13 on the Stimpmeter, which is not going to make our boy Jeff Shackelford very happy. He said in his newsletter he was really hoping that the greens would run a little slower, so there would be a little more pin positions available. He says that certain spots with some of these US Open green speeds of 13, just some of the edges around the green and some, how it's contoured, it basically makes some places unpinnable. So there's really only maybe 2 or 3 places you can actually put a pin if they're running that fast. But the SGA decides they want to run it at 13 the Stimpmeter. That's fine. I mean, I like seeing fast greens. I like seeing guys struggle to 2-putt. From an entertainment standpoint, fine with me. I'm not the one golfing there. The fairways and rough, though, is different than bent grass, though. So the greens are bent grass. The fairways and rough are a Tifway to Bermuda, basically kind of your common Bermuda. And that's a very common grass combination in California, a Bermuda fairway and rough golf course, bent grass greens. Now, the rough, though, is 3 to 4 inches in length, which for Bermuda, that's fairly long. It's a little different than your ryegrasses. Sometimes you see it be 4, 4.5, 5 inches, but sometimes with that, the ball can kind of sit up. With Bermuda, though, it's really luck of the draw at that point. Sometimes it can sit kind of nicely, but in really long Bermuda, the ball can really sink to the bottom and kind of nest around a little bit. Really, really difficult to get a good contact on the ball if your ball just goes to the bottom in Bermuda, and it's 3 to 4 inches. So compare that to another major venue we saw last year in Southern Hills with Bermuda fairways and rough. Although that rough actually had some ryegrass in it, but it was mostly Bermuda, and then bent grass greens. So the greens at Southern Hills ran pretty slow, ran about maybe 11 or 12 on the Stimpmeter. These are going to run 13, so much faster bent grass greens we saw last year. But the rough at Southern Hills is only 2.25 inches. So this is going to be about 1 inch to 1.5 inches, maybe almost 2 inches longer in some spots than it is at Southern Hills. This rough is going to be gnarly to deal with. It's also important to note, too, that there's actually a different type of rough around each bunker. It's a tall fescue, kind of give it more of its rugged, natural look. That's also very gnarly. If you saw some of the guys in the Walker Cup hit it kind of in that fescue, they had a tough time with it. But overall, though, around the green, though, it's mostly shade Bermuda, tight lies. you're going to get a lot of variety this week as far as some of the types of short game shots these guys are going to have. And then, so this is a George Thomas design, though. He designed in 1927, William Bell. If you remember the name, George Thomas also did Riviera, which is just a stone's throw away. But, there's very little Riviera in this place. Part of it has to do with agronomy. That's Kikuyu, plays really slow. Another is the elevation changes. I mean, Riviera is mostly just in a dry riverbed, kind of in a canyon there, that didn't have a lot of, elevation changes. A lot of that was really man-made. This is much more elevated. It's just, there's some similarities as far as maybe some shot making abilities, but you're probably going to hear a lot of people compare this place to Riviera because it's low hanging fruit. Not exactly. There's some other courses that I'll get to at the end of this video, whenever we end, that I think this is more closely aligned to. Spoiler, it's kind of a Frankenstein of a lot of things. So, and then the bunkers. Actually, no, before I get to that. So Gil Hance, though, as I mentioned earlier, along with Jeff Shackelford, went in and restored the golf course, I think in the mid 2000, or they did it around 2008, right around the housing crisis when the economy kind of went in the crapper. So they had a plan in mind. Unfortunately, the economy crashed, but they didn't want to just abandon it because they loved the golf course. It had been just kind of tired and lost its character over the years. They had a really good, solid master plan for it. They decided, okay, what can we do? So they kind of did this in piecemeal with the limited budget they had. And eventually over the years, they gave you the golf course that we see today. And then the last thing, just as kind of a note that I saw from the Walker Cup and something that Paul Azinger said. So I noticed a lot of the guys had bunkers or trouble getting out of the bunkers there, mostly because they're amateurs at that point. Like they're really good ball strikers, but their short games are really raw and not well defined at that point. So I saw really poor bunker shots. But one of the things that Azinger pointed out, and I think Faxon did too, is that guys are having trouble getting anywhere close out of a bunker. Azinger said he probably didn't see many good bunker shots during the tournament, mostly because there wasn't really a whole lot of sand at the bottom of each bunker. So, it just was really hard to put some good spin on it, control the ball. It was tough that way. So I don't know if they addressed that issue or if they didn't. I do expect that these guys, the professionals, are way better short game players than the amateurs were. But something to keep in mind. I mean, getting out of these bunkers might be kind of tricky if there's not a lot of sand to work with you. I think you either got to be a really, really, really good bunker player to do it, or maybe it shrinks the gap between a really poor one and kind of an above average one because it just makes it really difficult for everybody and no one's really getting it close to the pin coming out of there. So that's the general information. And then let's talk about some little challenges to breaking down this US Open. And I'm just going to be perfectly honest with anybody watching this. This is probably one of the more difficult golf courses I've ever had to break down. There are a lot of unknown variables about this place. Obviously, we only have one reference point, which is the Walker Cup, which is basically 5 hours of coverage that mostly showed just putts and chip shots. There's not really a whole lot there. You have Google Earth. You got some flyover videos, but it's definitely more complex than that. First of all, it was a big challenge for me as far as determining where these guys are going to hit approach shots from for several reasons. Number one is because there's a lot of dramatic elevation changes and deceptively short or long holes. So, a general rule of thumb, for every 3 feet of elevation change, you basically lose a yard on your carry. So that kind of helps. But still, you're taking a guess at this point what a guy is going to do hitting a ball up towards a hill or down a hill. We'll see. And then once it hits the ground, you don't really know where it's going to go. So that's a challenge too. It's deceptively wide fairways too. I'll show you a couple of holes where it looks like it's 40, 50, 60 yards wide. It looks like you can blast it anywhere. The problem is, though, on one half of a fairway, it's a very flat lie. It's a place where you want to be. But once you start drifting a little far to right, it goes dramatically downhill, back all the way towards the right, down the rough. Maybe you're blocked up by a tree. You got to carry it way uphill over a bunker. makes it tough. It basically shrinks the fairway. And once the ball hits the ground, you don't really know where it goes. So you kind of got to analyze too what happens if somebody hits it down on the wrong part of the fairway versus where they hit in the correct part. And then there's weather concerns too. You probably have heard about the marine layer, the May and June gloom in LA that basically makes it really cloudy for most of the time. Well, apparently it has overstayed its welcome. It has been around for a couple months. Apparently the people out there are kind of sick of seeing a lot of gray. They're ready for the sunshine. And that's important because they got a lot of rain back in January. You had the atmospheric river that just dumped a lot of rain on the area. And this marine layer has been just kind of sitting over the area for the last couple months or so. And yeah, it hasn't rained at all, so it's dried out a little bit, but you still have that moisture kind of trapped down below the marine layer there. You also talk to golfers too who have gone from hot and humid conditions, like a couple years ago when they played in Memphis with the WGC FedEx and they went over to Harding Park. And you had Justin Thomas talking about how, he was carrying it 305 in Memphis, and he gets his TrackMan, he goes over to Harding Park and he lost 15 yards of distance. And that's kind of what the marine layer does, is it makes the air more dense and the ball just doesn't fly as far. Now, that's tricky to handicap right now because marine layer can be kind of fickle. You saw this a little bit at Pebble Beach a couple of years ago. Sometimes it comes and goes. If it goes, then the wind is going to kick up. The air is less dense, so you can actually carry it a little farther. But if that marine layer is going to be hanging around the entire tournament, that's going to impact how far these guys carry it. So that makes it more of a challenge of trying to figure out where these guys are going to hit their approach shots too, because I don't really know exactly where the ball's going to end up at that point. It could be a lot shorter back, or the marine layer kind of clears out. They could be way, way far ahead. And then another thing that makes it a little complicated too is the turf conditions. There's been rumors about how firm this place actually is. I think most people are just going to assume that, Southern California, no rain, firm. And we've seen some examples like that where, the Torrey Pines US Open back in 2008 or the Pebble Beach one in 2010, it was just firm and everybody was just, the ball was running. We've also seen examples where the Pebble Beach US Open 2019, I think, marine layer just stayed up the entire time, played kind of slow at that point. And the turf conditions were just kind of soft. And word on the street so far is that it seems like LACC is kind of soft right now. A couple weeks ago, Max Homa, did an interview with Jeff Shackelford. He said that he was going to go out to LACC to, do some reconnaissance. I think the week at Colonial. He thought, or maybe it was Memorial possibly. And he talked to somebody who was there the previous week and said, well, don't go. This is soft. So Max Homa canceled the trip. He said, why should I go out there if it's not going to be firm? So I know up until about a couple weeks ago, it was really soft. Andy Johnson of the Fried Egg and the Shotgun Star podcast, he actually said that word on the ground is it might be pretty soft. Now, he says there might be a lot of birdies. I think he said it in jest, but overall, though, it seems like, and I'll show you some areas, the USGA, where they've manipulated some of the rough to grow it out. Well, a byproduct of that means some water has gotten to other parts of the golf course, mostly, I think, to make it uniformly green so it looks good on television. And because it has been a little cool and you haven't been able to grow the rough out a little bit, this golf course might not be as firm as what we think it's going to be. And if it's not as firm as what we think it's going to be, then that makes things really challenging because, at that point, we're used to seeing the ball kind of roll out. But if it plays softer, where's it going to roll out to? Is there going to be a lot of rollout? I mean, I don't think it's going to be pillow soft, but it's going to make this golf course play a lot longer, I think, than what we're going to see. So tonight, I'm going to try and guess where I think the approach shots are going to be. I'm going to try and basically use some offsetting factors. I'm going to assume that the marine layer is kind of in place to kind of prevent the ball from carrying out a little bit, but I'm going to assume it's relatively firm. So kind of cancel each other out. And then I'm going to guesstimate about where these guys are going to hit their approach shots from, try to help you out. And hopefully we can kind of figure out this golf course and figure out where he's going to get approach shots from, what type of golfers you're going to want to bet on. And then we'll see. And then we'll keep our ears to the ground for the next couple of days, trying to get a little reconnaissance for people on the ground, how's turf playing, listen to some players, then maybe we can finalize a little bit. Okay, it's going to be this type of tournament, because if it's going to be really fiery and firm, I think it's going to be very difficult. If it's going to be kind of soft and benign, there might be some opportunities for these guys to go low, and that's going to affect all your scoring props and miscut props and all the ones I really like to bet on that I usually have a good handle on before I go to a tournament. We'll see about this one. All right, so let's share my screen at this point. Let's get right to hole number 1. Here we go. Let me get my Google Earth up. Okay. So I mentioned earlier that there's not a lot of Riviera to this place, but the biggest part of Riviera here is basically a George Thomas, basically a design, what he always had, like a signature to all his golf courses. Almost all his original designs, he likes to start everybody off with a pretty straightforward, benign, gettable par 5. You see this at Riviera on hole number 1. You're right by the clubhouse, teeing down below. It's, I think, 550 or 530 is the par 5. It plays basically a par 4.5. It's just a nice handshake hole, get you started with your round, get your birdie, get some confidence back. And then immediately he turns it around and just kicks you right in the nuts with a really difficult par 4. And that is exactly what we have here. So starting out, we have hole number 1, par 5, 590 yards. So like I mentioned earlier, I'm going to read a little bit what Jeff Shackelford has to say about this hole. So this is what he has to say about this hole and some of the strategies and how it plays. So he says that there's no advantage to hitting either side of the fairway. It also plays downwind prevailing afternoon sea breeze, assuming the marine layer clears out. If it doesn't, there's not going to be any wind, no helping wind. A 400-yard drive is possible with the right conditions. Again, if there's downwind or if it's firm enough, might get a 400-yard drive. If not, a little farther back than that. Players going for the green in 2 will be wise to miss short and right. You want to beware playing directly at the flag for back left locations, and there's nothing good over the green. And I'll show you in a little bit how the green is structured, where you really don't want to miss long. And wise players will play a few paces right of any hole cut from center to left locations, because the green feeds pretty much everything to the left. So if you got to get caddy, he'll show you, he'll point out exactly where in the green you want to land the ball, and the ball will kind of funnel back over towards the hole. So let's explore this hole in a little more detail. Let's get the elevation profile here. So they're teeing off right on the practice green here. And actually, let me scroll up a little bit. There we go. So they're teeing off at about 375 feet of elevation, and it goes gradually downhill all the way down to the hole. So let's actually zoom over to where these balls are going to land. So probably about right in here is, and again, this depends on where if the marine layer is there, it's going to kill any carry. You are getting some assist because it's being down here. You're getting about 6 yards extra carry distance. So the PGA Tour average for carry distance is about 288. So about right, about here, the average player. Obviously, a longer player can get it carried about 300 or so, 305. And then depending if it's really firm, ball could just start rolling and rolling and rolling. And if not, then it might not get a little rollout. So there's no significant slope to the fairway here. It's pretty flat over here. That's definitely different than some other holes that we're going to talk about. So again, it makes sense that Jeff said that there's no real advantage for hitting either side of the fairway. As long as you avoid the bunkers here, got a flat lie and a good look. It's definitely better to be over on the right side here, because you definitely have a better look at the green. So there are 2 bunkers that pinch in the fairway here. This one over here, that's 268 to carry. Not going to be really in play for the best players. And if it is in play for a player you want to bet on, I would definitely rethink that decision. I don't think a very short hitter is going to, I think they're going to have a tough time unless it's really firm here. But it's this bunker right over here. It's 294 to the bunker. It's about 305 to carry. Or no, I'm sorry. It's about 313 to carry. Here's the thing, though. So you see where I point out this is new? So this is new rough that the USGA is actually growing out. So this was all fairway back at the Walker Cup, and normally it is. And they are pinching in the fairway pretty significantly just to kind of toughen it up. I mean, it's not really what George Thomas would want. It's still going to be gettable as long as you hit the fairway here. But if you're in the bunker over here, if you're in the rough, You don't have a great angle to the green. This is going to be 3 to 4 inch rough. And then you're probably looking to lay up. And if you're overstuck on the left here, in your layup zone, there's a big bunker about 70 yards short of the green. You don't really want to be there. So you got to make sure it's short here. But otherwise, though, I don't really care about this bunker over here because if you're sending your tee shot over here pre-screwed, I want to care about, I basically only care about guys who are hitting a nice left to right fade, takes it right through the shoot here, and then gets to about around here. So as far as your proximity goes, I mean, it depends. If it's running really firm, you could see Bryson or Cam Young or Rory, get out here around 400, and that's about 190 yard shot to the green. I would probably expect, though, if it's not quite as fiery and running, and if there's a marine layer, probably somewhere in this box over here, which if you just do a quick measurement, let's get rid of the elevation profile there. Just do a quick measurement down to, so it's about 287 to 3, we're looking at about, 265 or so, I would say. I would say most players with the ball, once it hits the ground, can probably get it out to like 320, 330 or so. If you're a little shorter back, maybe about, 330. So like 275 to 250. If you're shorter, if you're a longer hitter, you definitely get out a little more. But I mean, what's really important is just get to a range where you feel like you hit the green into, get to a position where you hit the green to. And then if you go over, let's get over to the green here. And then let's tilt down a little bit. So, what was that? That was weird. All right, so there's a lot of room right here that if you do want to miss, you want to miss front right here. This is a relatively pretty easy chip shot back towards the green with back to the green here. A lot of green to work with. This is relatively flat too. This is where you're going to have a little more trouble. Everything wants to feed towards the center, right from the bunker here. But everything in the back here wants to feed away. And all this is runoff down here. So if you're long, your ball is going to go way below the surface. And it's about, like 5 to 10 feet or so down here. If it's really running firm, you can't stop it. So definitely don't go long here. Everything kind of repels away from the green. Otherwise, though, relatively straightforward hole. As long as you avoid the bunkers, you don't get out of position, you should be able to get a birdie and get out of here with a good start. All right, so let's go over to hole number 2. Let's swing around this way, and then let's zoom out. By the way, I can't see it. If there's any comments, by the way, I will check when we get to hole number 9. If you got any questions, feel free to leave it in the chat. I will answer as best I can. If I don't have an answer, then I'll answer for you on Monday or on Sunday when I do the part 2 of the preview, when I actually can find that out for you. So stay patient. If you have a question, I'll eventually get to you. All right. So hole number 2, like I mentioned before, this is the par 4.5, or maybe this might be par 4 3/4, depending on how this plays. So this is a par 4, 497. Here's what Jeff Shackelford has to say about this hole. So a good tee shot flirts with a fairway bunker. This fairway bunker right here, not this one. This one's not in play. But a good tee shot flirts with this fairway bunker over here. And it leaves a flatter stance for their second shot. Any drive down the right side down here will be slowed by a slight upslope and a side hill stance. And you don't really want to have the ball above your feet going to this green that I'll talk about in a little bit. Basically, your optimal shot shape for this hole for the tee is a right to left shot. So you can get it down in this area right here. A drive of 320 gets past the fairway bunker, which I think he's a little off on that. Based on my measurements, only about 305, but immaterial at that point. Regardless, so a good drive will get it past this fairway bunker. This bunker also been shifted a little farther down the fairway to make it a little more play for these guys. And then as far as the green goes, the back right hole location is the most difficult due to the tilt of the green. There's also barranca that runs in front and around the side here. So let's get to the nitty gritty of this hole. Let's get to the elevation changes of this one. So tee box starts down here, 311, and it's pretty flat going for most of the tee shot here. Let's zoom up towards the fairway here and get a little closer look. So right at about, I would say, around 300 or so, it starts to go slightly uphill. And then it levels out again to around 325. So you don't really have to worry about too much elevation change on your tee shot. It's kind of just hit away. Obviously, what Jeff Shackelford said was correct. Let's actually show you, the elevation changes of this fairway here. So the widest part of the fairway here is about 42 yards wide, but most guys are going to be blowing past this with a driver. It's here where you start seeing a little bit more the narrowing of the fairway. Here it's about 33 yards wide, and a little farther past it's about 37 yards wide. But if I show the elevation profile of this, you can see how it's definitely flatter over on the left side here. And then you have the ball slightly above your feet over on the right side. And it's the same thing over here too. So if you do have your tee shot on the right side of the fairway, it's going to be a little bit above your feet, make the approach shot a little more difficult. It's going to want to send it more towards the left. Over here is a more challenging tee shot, taking on the bunker, but it's a flatter lie, makes the approach shot a little easier there. As far as the proximity goes, where you're going to hit it from? Well, see these markers right here? So these are from the Walker Cup, and everyone was either USA or GBI. Here's the problem, though. These are actually all the approach shots into the 17th green, which is down this way. So I can't imagine for pace of play issues, they're going to allow guys to go down 17. If they do, and they allow, there's actually a couple holes on this golf course that you can do that on to play down the wrong fairway. That's going to be an absolute disaster for pace of play. I actually hope they don't. I hope they take a page out of the PGA Championships playbook and say, if you hit a drive into the wrong fairway, it's out of bounds. Let's play everybody straight on this one. So these aren't actually where they're going to hit approach shots from, but conveniently enough, kind of where all the markers are. This is 275. That's 300, 325, 350. If there's a marine layer to cut down your carry distance, I would expect, for the shorter hitters, probably ended up at 275 and rolling out. For a longer hitter, you could technically probably get it up closer to this 325 mark. The problem is there's another plateau that's about here, might slow the ball up a little bit. So I think probably in about this range here is where we're looking at the approach shot from. So if you do just some quick measurements here, let's say if you're a really long hitter, about 170 probably, 165 maybe to the green. If there's a little bit of rollout, maybe a little shorter than that. For most of the field, though, I would probably expect, 175 to 200 is going to be your approach shot proximity here. Maybe a little shorter if the marine layer is really holding up balls and is not running quite as fast. Anything that these guys any variables that these guys can get to shorten this hole up would be definitely beneficial. And then let's go to the green here. This is a really difficult green. Let's zoom in a little bit. So you can see the barranca down below the putting surface in front of it here. There's also some barranca going towards the third tee box over here. So, and everything slopes from back to front here pretty severely, by the way. It kind of reminds me a little bit of the a Brookline green. I forget which hole it was, but it's one where just like everything slopes severely back to front and it just keeps going downhill from here. Everything, if you're short, goes back into this barranca, and you do not want to be in the barranca at all. If you also miss over on the right here, it's going to fall back into the barranca as well. This is a backstop over here, but if you're long and left, for example, and you got to chip back onto this green, it's going to be really hard to stop the ball, and you might end up going back down the barranca. That's why it's really important to have a really good stance in the fairway and hit it more towards the left instead of having the ball above your feet if you're a righty. So yeah, this is going to be a really difficult hole. You're probably giving at least a shot back on this hole. If you par this hole and make it through the first two at 1 under, you're doing really good. You're gaining a lot of strokes in the field at that point. Otherwise, though, no shame in giving that birdie back on this hole and starting off at even. That's what most of the field is going to do. You can make a real mess of this hole, though, if you end up in this barranca. So, all right, let's go over to the third hole. This is a very interesting hole. This is going back up the hill. Let's adjust my view a little bit. There we go. All right. So this is a par Par 4, 419 yards, so short in the scorecard, but it's deceptively long, and there's a lot of interesting land movement that is really going to dictate how you do on this hole. So here's what Jeff Shackelford has to say about this hole. So the tee shot plays over a steep ridge with Barranca looming down the left. There are a couple palm trees, which you actually kind of see in this 3D rendering right here. You basically want to aim for that. That shows where the green is. There's actually another hole I think that has a similar feature. Drives that play it safe down the right have a severe side hill lie for their stance, and I'll show you exactly how severe it's going to be in a little bit. Aggressive tee shots up the left here. It's significantly more uphill than it would be if you're up here on the shelf here. However, it's a much flatter lie. So it's a trade-off at that point. Do you want to not have as much of an elevation change, but you want the ball above your feet there? Or do you want to take on a little more risk off the tee shot here, possibly land in the Barranca? Well, if you clear it, even though it's a much more uphill shot, you have a better angle to most pin locations, and it's a flatter lie. So there's options at this place. A carry of 285 with an elevation rise of 55 feet up to here allows players to reach the ideal landing spot. If the pin is back left over here, and I'll show you, you probably actually want to be over here because when the ball is above your feet, then it'll actually help you get to that location. That's probably the only way he can actually envision somebody would actually want to be over on the right side here. Otherwise, most guys are going to want to opt to be on the left side of this fairway, which is not easy to get to, as I'll show you. Approach play plays about the approach from down here plays about 30 feet uphill to one of the largest greens on the golf course. They call it the molar green. It looks like a giant molar. I think it's about 10,000 square feet in area, just a giant green. Very significantly contoured and sloped though, which I'll show you in a little bit. So let's break down this course or this hole. So for the Walker Cup, by the way, and actually I have one data point actual approach shot that we'll get to a little bit, but they teed off from around here. There's a new tee box right by the second green that added, I think, about 25 yards to this hole. So that's important to keep in mind when we talk about this. But I'll show you the elevation profile here. So you can see this is where the tee shot starts down here, and immediately right in your face, it goes about 20 feet uphill to a little plateau. And it runs that way all the way to about the edge of this Barranca, which is 275 to here, which is about 40 yards wide. And then once it gets past there, it plateaus a little bit here and starts going uphill from there. This is where it really starts playing uphill for your approach shot. But what's really most important about this hole, though, is how the fairway is undulated. So right at the mouth of the opening here, the fairway, that about the 275 mark, balls want to run from right to left. So up here, it's about 355 in elevation. It runs down about 13 feet back down towards the Barranca. At about 300 yards here, it's actually on the opposite direction. Again, it's about 356 down to about 346. So about 10 feet of drop, but it starts to level out here. It plays a little bit kind of like a bowl. And then same thing over at 325. I don't expect anybody to actually get to 325. It's a little less of a severe downslope. But again, as I zoom in here, and what's funny is you can actually see all the divots on Google Earth of guys who are just hitting approach shots from this area. Jeff actually commented that he thinks that might be a big issue with a lot of balls just ending up in this general vicinity right here, and guys might hit into divots, and it just make them, pretty frustrated. Kind of like what happened to John Rahm last week at Memorial. Pray for him if that happens again. Pray for this golf course if that happens again. He's probably going to take a couple more divots in this place if that happens. So here's a shot that randomly came on the broadcast. They didn't film anything on the front nine FS1 for the Walker Cup. They happened to catch a really good shot from a guy on GBI. I forget which guy it was, but he was around this 300-yard mark right here on about the crest of the hill going uphill right here. Problem is, though, he had about 25 yards extra. So really his tee shot would have landed here. But with, the GBI guys are really short off the tee. And considering the advancements in technology of the last 6 years, yeah, it is a little more uphill. But I would probably expect, and let's get the elevation profile back for where these guys are hitting it to. With about 20 feet uphill here, you're losing about 10 yards of carry. So most guys, if you hit a right to left tee shot here, around if you carry about 280 or so, it'll funnel back around here. So I think and then longer players can definitely get a little farther up. So I think for the most part, this is correct. Where a lot of these divots are, you can safely assume probably this is where the approach shot's going to come from. So, just doing quick measurement over here, get rid of that elevation profile. So if you're really like right at the bottom here to the middle of the green, 125 that plays about 27 feet uphill. So you're losing about 9 to 10 yards. So plays more like 135 or so. Move it a little farther past, like 110 or so, playing like 120, etc. I don't expect anybody really to get past 325 here, just based on how severely the hole goes uphill at this point. So you're looking about like maybe a possibly 100 to 125 yard shot that plays more like 125 to 150. That's probably the proximity I would use on this hole, because that's going to be the club and the yards you're actually going to be hitting towards this place. Again, it's about 285 to carry the Branca here. So yeah, I expect most of the approach shots to, congregate around here. And then this green. So you can see right here, looks shaped like a molar. And that's another thing too. Like if you're down in this area right here, the approach shots, you take these bunkers basically out of play unless it's a back right or front right location, then you got to take it on. If you're over on the right here though, you got to fly it over. There's no real bailout at that point. So this is a huge green though. Everything slopes back to front. This is going to be a really difficult green to putt on, especially with how big it is. It's deceptively hard hole. It's 419 on the scorecard, but as you can see here, there's a lot of land movement that makes it a little more challenging. And you really got to make sure, I would say, make sure your tee shot lands wherever it lands here. It funnels back down to the left side of the fairway. Otherwise, this just makes it a little more tougher if you're coming from this way. All right, let's go to hole number 4. This is par 3, 228, but it plays a lot shorter because it plays downhill. Here's what Jeff Shackelford has to say about this hole right here. So the green is set in a low area protected by hills and trees. Barranca wraps around the back right of the green, where short grass helps bring in the hazard. It's that right there. He says there's a 53-foot drop from the 220-yard tee. That's a little much, as I measured out here. The USGA agrees. I think it's it's more about 28 feet or so. So, it changes by a couple yards, but overall though, same point. This plays downhill. It doesn't play like it's actually 228. So depending on the hole location and the tee, it can vary by as much as 40 yards. You might see then put the tee location down here one of these days. This is where I think they're going to start him off at though. And then just his general strategy is all just hit the center of the green. So let's scroll. Let's actually zoom down to this green here. So kind of like the second hole, everything wants to feed towards the Barranca. If you're short, everything will go down here, and you do not want to be in the Barranca. It's very difficult to get up and down if you're in this area right here. Again, kind of like the second green too. If you miss it a little far right, it's going to fall down into the Barranca again here. There's a little backstop here to help you if you go a little long. It'll feed the ball back towards, the back center or back right of the hole here. And then it feeds a little bit, there's a little bit of a ridge here that helps feed balls back a little bit here too. So again, though, this middle of the green, pretty flat. Just get your par and move on. And it's about 202 to clear the Barranca here. So your proximity, on paper it's 225, 250, but it's going to play more like a 200, 225 yard shot because it plays downhill. You're getting about 8 yards of extra carry. They might move the tee box too, so it might play, 200 one day. You're looking at a 200, 225 yard shot, essentially. for this hole. All right. Hole number 5. This is going to be a ball buster. I think this is one of the 2 really long par 4s that are just going to be really tough. There's another hole that plays very similar to this hole on the back 9, though you get to a little bit, you'll feel like you're looking at deja vu here. So this is hole number 5, par 4, 480 yards, all uphill. Pretty significantly uphill too. No fairway bunkers here, pretty wide, but again, it's really deceptively wide based on how the fairway slopes way up here. So here's what Jeff Shackelford says about this hole. It's the first of 2 blind tee shots and one of the 3 where players won't see where the tee shot ends up. Drive should aim for the far left pine tree, basically this one right here. Tee shots, 290 yards will cover the crest. Basically, it'll get to the plateau up here, which, again, I think his yardages are a little off. I'll show you when I do the elevation profile exactly what yardage you get to. You get this plateau right here. It'll also give you the best angle to the green if you're up on the left here. Even though this fairway is about 70 yards wide, which actually is a little off, it's more like 55 to 60 yards wide. Players must aim up the left, or else their drive is going to trundle all the way back down to the right over here. You're not going to be able probably to hold this fairway if you hit the ball to the right here. It's going to go either all the way down to the rough or right to this edge here. And that's just a horrible angle to this green, as I'll show you in a little bit. But if you are a little too cute and you put drives a little too far left, you're going to end up in this area right here, more towards the 6th green. You're going to get blocked out by a pine tree. Your only option might be to just bail out in these 2 bunkers well below the putting surface over here. But the green overall, because it is going to be a longer approach shot, it's one of the simplest greens on the golf course. Doesn't have a whole lot of contouring. There's a nice little bailout area over to the left here to help you get up and down a little bit. But it really is all about the tee shot here. That is the challenge. So let's show the elevation profile here. So again, like you just saw on the 3rd hole, you see a huge hill. Actually, let me get up a little bit. So you see a huge hill right in front of you. So starting, about where the fairway begins here, it goes straight up the ridge here. And then let's scroll up. And then going to takes only about to 275 for a carry, but that's about, 44 feet above the tee box. So you're losing about 14 yards off your carry. So if you're somebody who only carries at 290 in the air, even without the marine layer, you're barely just getting to the top of the ridge here. If you're somebody who can carry it a lot farther than that, you can get right to this flat spot here. Maybe you'll get a little more rollout before the hole starts going back uphill a little bit. But if there's a marine layer, though, I mean, you might see guys hit the side of the hill here and the ball just kind of stops. So that makes it a little bit of a challenge as far as how far these guys can get it down there. Anything to shorten this hole is great. If not, though, that's going to make the hole a little harder, though. So let's show you, though. I mean, it's way more important to show you, kind of like with the 3rd hole, how the fairways are undulated here. So the reason why you want to stay up on the left side here is because, the ball will be slightly below your feet, but it's relatively flat. It's also got a great angle to the green here. You have a little bit of a bailout if you miss a little left here too. But once you start getting towards the middle of the fairway here, it starts going way downhill. So at about 280 here, that's where this line is. It's about 14 feet left to right slope. And then it's the same once you get to about 325. So pretty much like in the entire landing zone here that I'm estimating, it's about a 14 to 15 yard drop from the left side of the fairway to the right side of the fairway. So that goes to show, if you can keep it up on the left side here, you got a great angle to the green here. Again, you got a nice little, apron here that you can navigate around and try and get up and down. But if you're down here, though, you run some tree trouble over here. And again, you got to carry these bunkers. And these bunkers are well below the putting surface here. They're about, about 7-8 feet here. Again, it's not a very contoured green, but you're just making life way more difficult for you if you put your tee shot down here. So again, like even though this is really wide fairways, it's pretty narrow. Like this is 50 to 60 yards wide. That plays more like 25 to 30 yards or so. And that happens a lot. Like this golf course tricks you into false security where, oh, this is a really wide fairway. And especially you can't really see where the ball lands up here. If you've never played this place before, you might be really surprised that your ball ended up down here. So that's a big challenge of this place. And then as far as the green goes, like I said, very gentle contours here. Balls kind of feed back a little bit more to the center on the back wedges here. Feeds a little bit towards this bunker over here. But overall, though, this is very receptive to a longer approach shot, what it's designed to do. All right, 6th hole, which is probably going to be, I would say if George Thomas has a template hole, this is as close as it's going to be. It's your classic short par 4 with risk rewards options. Let's swing around here and let's get the 3D rendering a little better, please. Maybe not. Maybe not going to cooperate. Okay, let's just talk about the hole. So this is the short par 4, 330 yards, your tee all the way up over here. The tiny little green is all the way down here. And you have 3 options, according to Jeff Shackelford. So your first option is to be super aggressive and to take the shortest route, which is carrying it over this hill over here, over the trees, which, by the way, you can see the green because I'm way high up in a little helicopter here. At the tee box, though, you cannot see the green. This is completely obstructed. You are sending the ball into the abyss and just praying that it lands in an ideal spot. Or option 2, you can take the safe route. You can get to the middle of this huge fairway down here, about 255. The only problem is you have probably the worst angle into the green is an extremely shallow green. You have barranca in front. You have a bunker in back. All this behind is like it's a backstop, but it's all just garbage and weeds and barranca and Bermuda and just not a place you want to be. So if you go long, that's terrible. Or you can take on a little more risk and go down. You basically have it your cake and eat it too. You can play the safe route here, but then you take it all the way close to the edge of this fairway, which if you go too far, it's going to go down to the barranca down here. And then you're in a world hurt again. But if you get it as far as you can down this fairway here, you actually set up a really nice angle to the green. So you got 3 options. You could either take a long iron, take it all the way over here. You can take a shorter iron, try to get in the middle here, nice and safe, guarantee yourself a nice shot to the green. Or, take that same club you're going to use here, push it this way if you don't want to take on too much risk over here, and have a nice little flip wedge back to the green. So so this green, though, it's about 3,000 square feet. Again, really tiny. It slopes towards the 7th hole. There's a small bump over here that basically severely punishes anybody who misses over here. So if you're going for it, this little bump over here can just cause the ball to go in a couple different directions over here. It's about 275, 280 to get to this area right here. This little mark is just the edge of the green, about 287. So yeah, he's pretty right on his measurements of this hole. If you're laying it up, like I just mentioned, push as far down the fairway here as possible because you'll get the best angles of green. If it's a shorter layup, you get a worse angle. And I'll show you. And they only showed a couple shots from the Walker Cup. I'm actually kind of disappointed that they didn't show more, but I think it's just because when coverage came on. So the coach for USA, I forget what his name was, but he basically drilled into his team, like, do not go for the green at all costs. Just get the easy tee shot. And again, these are college players. He's just trying to manage the amount of risk that they took. So everybody hit it down here, and they only hit it to the middle part here. But as you can see, though, let's zoom in a little more. If you're in the middle of this fairway here, you have no green to work with here. So this lower right tier right here is only 6 paces deep. It's relatively flat, though, but you just have no green to work with. It's a very small margin there. This over here is a little wider. It's about 12 paces deep, but it's heavily guarded by a front bunker and a back bunker, and it's really undulated. It slopes pretty severely from back to front here. So it's just a really difficult green to navigate. But if you can, but if you push it a little farther, though, let's say you're over here, you actually have a really nice angle to this green over here. You basically kind of take these bunkers out of play. You really only got to worry about the barranca here. So that's the advantage of going farther down the fairway. However, if you go too far, then you're in here and then you're just screwed. And then the option, you can go for the green. Again, there's this little bump here if you miss. I mean, I don't really know what these guys are going to do. It might depend on circumstance. I mean, I thought that it'll kill. These guys were going to lay short of 14 into the fairway and just have a nice, easy wedge up. And it turns out they all drove the green. I mean, this is a little more severe because this is a very small landing zone here. And these guys are so good with their wedges. I mean, you're probably going to see most of the guys lay up and then try to have a flip wedge in. They can, especially if they push it down pretty far, they can get their birdie here. But I mean, you know what? They say the same thing about the 10th at Riviera, and everybody goes for that too. So maybe they just do that and they don't even worry about it. So, all right, let's go to hole number 7. Let's swing around. So this is a really long par 3. This is a par 3, 284 yards, plays down the hill here. For the Walker Cup, by the way, so this played, actually, they use this tee box back here to make it a really long par 4. You can actually make it about 330 yards. Otherwise, though, they use this tee box. They use this tee box down here, make it a longer par 3. Here's what Jeff Shackelford has to say about this hole. So the green is 40 paces deep and gently slopes from back to front. The property tilt from north to south makes this green play less back to front than it appears. Despite par 4 option, the hole only plays a par 3 in the U.S. Open. However, the yardage could vary by as much as 50 yards depending on the tee. It may play more in the 230, 240 range for pace of play. So basically, they use this area right over here. Over the green is absolutely dead, as I'll show you. But if it's a relatively simple 2-putt or up and down from the front apron over here, so when in doubt, just club down. So the elevation of this hole here, you're teeing off about over here. Hold on a second. All right, so you're teeing off up over here. You are playing downhill to the green over here. And then let's zoom in over here. Cameron, if you're watching, I will get to you after I'm done, which is not going to be for a while. Anyways, where's my chain of thought? All right, so it's about 21 feet down to the green over here. You got a lot of room up in front. A lot of guys just use, in the Walker Cup, just bounce the ball up to the green here. So it plays much shorter than the actual yardage. Like, you don't really actually have to fly at 284. You probably can only fly at about 250. And if it's firm enough, it'll trundle onto the green here. It does want to feed back down to the bunker, though. So if you do get it a little far this way, it's going to go back down here. Otherwise, though, if you bounce it here, you can probably just 2-putt and get out of there. If it's 290, clears bunker over here. But again, like, if the pin is back right and you're going for it, like, that's pretty reckless. And then if you're over the green here, everything's going to feed down towards, this is, I think, a different tee box than, I think this is actually the members tee for the 8th hole. But if you're over the green, you're feeding down this way. All right. I mean, that's that hole. It's a longer par 3, but it plays not quite as long as what it says, but it's a very long par 3 that plays downhill that if you just use the land, you can get to the green. All right. Let's go to par 5 8th. So it's only 537 yards, but you're probably looking at this hole right here. Let's get rid of this elevation profile. So you're probably looking at this hole. It's like, well, where's the green? And you can see the green from way up here. It's all the way over here. But if you're on the tee box, though, you can't see the green. It is blocked out by trees. Can't see it. All you can see basically is the run out of the fairway over here. So here's what Jeff Shackelford has to say about this hole. So the tee shot plays into a steep hill way over here with sycamores and barranca down the right. There are few recovery options if you're over here. Players need to take on the right side to get a better angle of the green. Hold on. I'm going to turn my phone off because my producer and my co-host are blowing me up, and that's distracting. Thanks, guys. Players need to take on the right side to get a better angle of the green. Otherwise, you're forced to hit a sweeping right to left shot over here, and I'll show you why that's just really difficult to pull out or to pull off. The Branca bisects the fairway about 360 yards here, as I'll show you. The green itself is really small. It's flat in the center with some slope in the upper right and left. The corner locations are the most difficult. The front and back left pins are going to bring in the Branca, and again, you don't want to be in the Branca. And do not miss on the left at any cost. So, looking down from the tee box here, it plays about 23 feet down to the fairway over here. And actually, let's just zoom right to this area because this is the biggest talking point is this area down here. There's 2 bunkers over here. They're not in play for the PGA Tour or for the US Open. So let's just zoom all the way down to here, and then let's pull up the elevation profile right here. Okay. So there we go. All right, so going for the tee box over here. Right about here, the fairway starts to drop and starts to feed towards the Branca down here. So, and the fairway is tilted about 6 feet left to right. So you do want to, and the reason why you want to play towards the Branca and basically towards the trouble and take out a little more risk on this tee shot is because there's an opening right here with the trees. And from this area right here, you can see the green. Now, it's not an easy straight shot. If you're hitting it straight over the trees, you're bringing all the Branca into play. If you hit a nice right to left draw, you can bounce the ball up to the green here. And how it's contoured, everything's going to feed towards the center. You got a really nice eagle look if you hit a really good tee shot down here. If you miss up on the left here, like poor Tron did in the no laying up video, you're basically laying up to about this area here. But another danger too is if you hit driver or hit it the ball a little too far, if you push it too far down the fairway here, you're blocked by this tree right here. So, or you basically have to hit a huge sweeping hook way around if you want to get to the green, which at that point, if you're hitting a hook, you have no control really once it hits the ground. It's probably going to go on the Branca. Or your best bet is maybe you bail on this bunker over here, which actually is not a terrible play. But if you really want a good look at the green, you got to be in this area here. And it's going to require less than driver. You basically want to keep it in this area right here. Otherwise, you run the risk of kind of going back down the rough or into the Branca. This fairway is also not very wide. It's only 32 yards wide here. So you don't have a lot of room to work with. It's probably less than driving this hole. Unfortunately, they didn't show any of this hole in the Walker Cup. So this is just kind of speculation. But I think that makes sense. If you get it around this area right here, you got a nice view of the green. You definitely make birdie. If you are missing, though, either in the Branca or up on the hill, or you push it too far down, like your angle here is just terrible. So it's 340 to the Branca over here. It's about 352 to carry it. Nobody's going to be able to carry it, though. You got to play it straight here. Basically, again, this little section right here, you can go for the green. And then the green, so this, if you hit it about here, it's about 200 to 225 to the middle of the green here. So you're playing about 200 to bounce the ball in. I mean, this isn't a very wide landing zone here. There's a lot of trouble left, as you can see. All this Branca to the left of the green. Absolutely nothing to work with. But the green itself is relatively benign. Everything feeds pretty much to the middle over here. Bailing out in this bunker. I mentioned the bunkers are pretty tough, but if you're a good bunker player, bailing in this bunker isn't too bad because everything wants to feed towards the center here. You still get up and down for a birdie. Just don't miss left at all costs here. So, all right, let's go to the 9th hole. We're going to close out the front 9 with a uphill par 3. This is the par 3 9th hole. It's 171 yards. It's a very narrow green, but it's a very long 3-tiered green. So here's what Jeff Shackelford has to say about this hole. So it plays southwest into prevailing sea breeze. The green is 43 paces deep, and it's very steeply pitched from back to front. There's a tier. It's about 15 paces in that separates front hole locations from the middle shelf. And then there's another shelf way in the back here, about 27 paces from the front of the green. And then back right over here is the most difficult hole location. And actually, he thinks the back left hole location, even though you got to carry it over this bunker here, it's actually the easiest hole location because everything wants to feed towards the left side of the green here, back towards this area. So And if you hit a nice little draw, if it's a back left location, you hit a nice little tight draw, or even from maybe this tee box down here, they might use this tee box for a back left hole location. You can get the ball really close for a good birdie. Like otherwise, though, let's actually zoom up to the green over here. So it's about 20 feet uphill. So it's plays about 7 to 8 yards more than what the scorecard yardage is. As far as the proximity, where the guys are hitting it from, it depends. It depends on really where they want to put the tee box. For the Walker Cup, they hit it from yards of 166, 191, 177, and 143. So about 50 yards of variation based on where the tee box is. So it depends. For the most part, though, probably between 150 and 175 is the optimal shot shape. And again, it's a narrow, but it's a very long green here. And everything. So the middle tier, or the first shelf, starts about right here. Next shelf is about right here. But then this pin location over here, everything wants to feed over towards the left here. Again, if you miss in the bunkers, especially if you miss in this little bunker right here, like that's not good. Missing in these bunkers over here, you run the risk of maybe ping-ponging back and forth, like you see in maybe Riviera. So that's the front nine. Let's see how we're doing in the stream here. Okay. All right. We're actually not doing, well, we're at an hour. Okay, great. All right. Let's maybe try and speed this up a little bit. Where am I? This thing just went haywire. Okay. Let's go over and do the front or the back nine. So, oh my goodness, where am I? Okay. There we go. Okay. Let's start the back nine. So this is the 10th hole. This is actually where we're going to start seeing a lot of Walker Cup stuff, where we can actually get a point of reference to where these guys are actually hitting tee shots from, or approach shots from. And then we can kind of play a little game as far as, okay, adjusting from amateur to PGA Tour star. Fortunately, a lot of the approach shots I marked on here are guys like Scotty Scheffler or Cam Champ or Doc Redman. And we know what they are. Doc Redman's a very shorter hitter. Scheffler he's gained a lot just in the PGA Tour, but he's kind of in the middle there. And Cam Champ just on the other extreme there. So there's also shots you're going to see from a guy named Norman Jong, very long hitter. He hit it almost as far as Cam Champ did back in college. So it's really kind of a shame he flamed out. He was supposed to be the next big thing. It didn't happen. But a lot of his shots are shown when I go through this video here, or the holes, and you can get a nice point of reference of if you're a really long hitter, where they were able to hit it to. And then we can kind of make adjustments from there. All right. So this is the par 4, 409 yards. Short par 4, a little bit uphill here. So here's what Jeff Shackelford had to say. Players tee off over a valley becomes a wide ravine, basically right here. The expanse of fairway turf was reduced for U.S. Open play, but under all conditions can disguise the reward for turning the drive over the downslope to secure a short iron and best angle into the length of the green. And I'll show you where they actually added rough. They added a lot of rough to this hole. It's uphill from the members tee, which is actually down here, is 320 to carry the fairway bunker way up here. From back here, though, it's about 342. We'll see if they actually use this front tee, though. It's a semi-blind second shot that really emphasizes staying pin higher below the hole. The green is pretty severely pitched once we get there. The green is very narrow. It's only 35 paces deep and steeply sloped back to front. And this is where he has concerns about the green speeds. He says that probably if they're running at 13, the hole location are probably only going to be either in the front or the left. The back and the right parts of the green, it's pitched too severely to actually put a pin, which is too bad. So his best strategy, just hit as far as you can down the fairway here, so you can try and get a short iron for a birdie. So let's pull up the elevation profile here. You can see, as he described, it goes down to a valley, but then it goes a little bit up, and your landing zone starts to get where it gets downhill. And so let's zoom in. There's a lot going on here, but I'll try and zoom in. So at the 300-yard mark, it starts to go pretty significantly uphill. Now at the Walker Cup, these guys played it a little shorter. They played it about 395. So they were able to get it basically up here for the most part. Like I know Kyle Morikawa was hitting some approach shots from here. This guy over here hit a really bad tee shot. He was actually able to hook it all the way around the tree here and actually get on the green. It was actually a great shot. There was a poor guy from GBI who got in this bunker over here. From the back tees, it's 267 to clear this bunker over here. 303 to clear this. This all was fairway though, and this is actually where we see our little friend Cam Champ. And Cam Champ, they love playing his tee shots because it just made it put Azinger just in a tizzy. But he was able to pump it all the way up to this bunker right here. Now, it was about 325 over here, but this poke is about 342. I mean, Cam Champ nowadays, I mean, it is uphill. He probably can't get it that far. It's probably more in this range. But you can see, though, if he hits it over here, this is 4-inch Bermuda now. So you really got to keep it dead straight ahead of you. If you're over in the rough over here, it basically makes birdie very difficult. So just hit as dead straight as possible up here. This is a 40-yard wide fairway, so you don't really have an excuse to miss the fairway on this hole. Again, I with the hazards, I point out the carry distance is over here. But, based on how far guys hit it nowadays, I mean, these are amateurs. This was 6 years ago. So even with the tee box about 15 yards behind, it's probably going to be in this range right over here. So get rid of that. So from this range right here, it's in the middle of the green, about 93 yards, maybe push it back a little farther because this is pretty severely uphill. So I would probably expect, a shot less than 125 that plays uphill to the screen. It's a shorter approach shot, definitely a good opportunity to get birdie, especially if the pins are here and here. And then going to the green complex here, this is all slopes back to front here. This is all relatively flat though. So pretty good pin locations here. If you miss in these bunkers though, makes it really tough up and down because you don't really have a lot to work with over here. All right, let's go to the 11th hole, and it actually shares the tee box with the 16th, and we'll get to in a little bit. I think this is the par 3 that has everybody talking. So this is a par 3 290 all the way down the hill here. And actually, I think in the final round of the Walker Cup, it played at 301. But this plays a lot shorter than what it says. I'll get to that in a little bit based on how it's laid out. So there's what Jeff Shackelford has to say. He has a lot to say about this hole. It's definitely one of the more talked about holes. We saw this hole a lot at the Walker Cup too. So it's a reverse Redan par 3 with the option to play as a risk reward 300-yard hole. It favors a left to right tee shot that feeds balls into the front portion of the green. The green is 38 paces to the deepest corner, but it's gently sloped back to front. The front portion features a strong tilt off the left hill over here, and more subtle pitch off the backside, off the fronting bunkers. You're going to see a lot of really long putts in this hole. The complex falls off on pretty much all sides over here. So, I mean, I don't know how you would be long on this hole, but if you somehow are, let's say you carried over this bunker, it's going to fall this way. I don't really know how you're going to be long over the green here, but mistakes happen. This green plays a little firmer due to its elevated and exposed setting. It plays downwind and downhill, so it's a lot shorter than the yardage indicates. Multiple yardages can be used too. I mean, like they could put the tee box down here, they could put it here. I mean, that would be a problem for 16, but there's a lot of ways this hole can be varied for yardages. But if you miss left, if you miss right, miss long, you're pretty much, if you miss these bunkers, you're pretty much dead. I saw a lot of guys in these bunkers over here. They couldn't get up and down. So let's actually zoom to the green here. And this spot right here, this is 270. So that's actually, get an elevation profile. So it's significantly downhill, guys. I mean, so the tee box is about 412. The front of the green here is 356. You're getting about 20 yards of carry down here, and you're the best place to land it. And you saw a lot of guys do this. I think Morikawa was able to do this. I think he hit a 3-wood. Was if you hit this spot about right here, there's a hill that will feed it all the way back down to the green. So this hole plays more like 250, really. So we've seen 250-yard par threes at the U.S. Open. It's about what that would be. So it's deceptively long, plays 290 on the scorecard, but it's really just a 250, 260-yard shot because then the ball will bounce here, get on the green, you make your two putt, and you get out of there. So, and as far as the green goes, I mean, everything feeds away from you here. Everything wants to kick towards the green over on the left side here. But if you miss over here, though, this is kind of no man's land over here. You don't really want to be here because everything runs away from you. And then everything feeds, if you're long, feeds over this way. So, I mean, if you hit a really bad bunker shot, it can, basically go over the green. Otherwise, though, you're looking at guys basically hit a little short over here, feed the ball to the right. All right, let's go to hole number 12. This is a really short par 4, but it plays pretty significantly uphill, and the USGA definitely manipulated this hole a lot. So this is the par 4, 380 yards. Here's what Jeff Shackelford has to say about this hole. It's a slight bending par 4 where a long draw can significantly shorten up the approach. So a nice right to left tee shot. Gets you in pretty good position. It plays into the afternoon breeze, so it plays uphill into the breeze, so it plays a little longer there. Playing towards the left side of the hole is rewarded due to the contours of the green. However, he thinks that because there's a lot of new rough over here, and I'll show you in just a bit, that might change your assertion of if playing towards the left side actually matters at this point, because you really want to be way over here to get the advantage. Towards the middle and the right, you don't get as much of an advantage. So that might not actually be true for this tournament. If you hit a tee shot high and right, it might get knocked down by the breeze. So basically, if you hit a really high fade, it might be bad news bears. It's a boomerang shaped green. You see a lot of those George Thomas designs. It's 27 paces deep. It's separated by an upper and lower section. Lower section plays a little smaller due to its pitch. And hole locations in back, center, and right might not be usable, again, because of the U.S. Open green speeds that he's very afraid of. So, show you his elevation profile. Very similar to a lot of holes you've already seen. Tee box is well below the fairway, and you just see a giant hill right in front of you. It's relatively blind, I think, the approach shot. So let's scroll way up here, and you can actually see these are mostly on, I think, Saturday or Sunday foursomes was where they were showing a lot of shots on 12. We didn't see a lot of them on singles, unfortunately. But you see it plays significantly uphill. A lot of guys, GBI down here, they were really short hitters. They were barely able to get it up the hill. They were only able to get up to here. But I think Norman John got it up to about 270 up here, which is about, you're basically losing about 18 yards a carry. So if you carry it about, 295 in the air, you're basically carrying it only about 278, which is about where he ended up right here. Cam Champ actually hit a 3-wood, hit it all the way up here, though. So it goes to show that if you are a really long hitter, you can definitely get it up to here, though. This was all new rough over here, though, or this is new rough. Fairway used to go all the way over here. So this is only 27 to 30 yards wide. So they really narrowed the landing zone. I don't know if I really like that whole lot. I guess I understand why they did it, but that seems to be really low hanging for the USGA to just, if they want to make a hole more difficult, just narrow it in. I mean, I think this hole is difficult enough as is with how you gotta, do this hole. But hey, that's why they run this event, and I'm just here on Google Earth breaking down 3D imaging here. He had a couple of really bad tee shots here. This poor guy hit the tree. Braden Thornberry, I think, hit this tree over here and bounced here, but he hit an awesome approach shot. He basically hit a huge cut over this tree, over this bunker, and I think he hit it like 3 feet. I mean, everything went the USA's way in that walk-up. They won 19-7, I think. So overall, though, I mean, with how long these guys are, you're probably hitting a 3-wood at this point. I mean, you're not getting a lot of distance. You're going to lose about 20 yards, but if the fairways are running firm, you can get to about this range right here. I mean, it demands a right to left shot, and that's a better way to keep the ball in the fairway than hitting a driver, unless you are really good at that. So, where do I think the approach shots are going to come from? I mean, for a shorter hitter, it's, this is about 250 over here, about 130 or so. If you're a longer hitter like Cam Champ, get up on the ridge about 90 yards. So, Depends. I mean, 100 to 125 for maybe most of the field, maybe 130-ish if you're a shorter hitter. But again, this is a nice shorter wedge. You really want to be in this fairway over here. So, a nice high ball flight. This green over here, too, very heavily contoured. A lot going on over here. Everything's kind of feeding towards the center here. Over on the right over here, it definitely runs away back. It's steep, pretty pitchly, or it's pitched pretty steeply. God, I've been doing this for a while. Pitched pretty steeply back to front here. Very narrow too. So tricky pin locations can be made, but they're hitting a wedge in. All right, 13th hole, another ball buster. And you probably already saw this hole because this hole features a lot of very similar stuff. You saw this in hole number 5, essentially. So this is hole number 13, par 4, 507. Again, very similarly laid out to hole number 5, a long par 4 straight up the hill. So here's what Jeff Shackelford has to say about this hole. So it's a straightaway par 4 with a 65-yard wide fairway there where it's aiming down the left side bunkers, basically aiming over here. An elevated tee shot over a steep fall off, but then it sees a huge fairway rise leading to another steep fall off before one more rise to the green. And I'm even though this fairway is about 65 yards wide, really the left side over here, that's about 25, 28 yards. That's where you want to be. But if you hit it towards the center or down towards the right, the ball is going to trundle all the way back down to the right side of this fairway into the rough. You might have some tree trouble. You got to carry it over the bunker. If you got a really horrible lie over here, there's a couple of cross bunkers over here that will make your life really difficult to try and navigate around. And if you're down over here, you can't see the surface of the green. In fact, I actually don't think you can see the green at all from wherever you are. It's another boomerang shaped green. It is 27 paces deep. I'm sorry, I read the wrong hole. Actually, that's hole number 12. So, if you miss left, way left, it's blocked out by this little pine tree over here. The approach shot on 13 is only blind if you hit down here. If you're up on the left shelf over here, you can see the green, but you won't be able to see the green if you're over on the right here. And the green is really large. It slopes from back to front. There's a bump on the left front over here that basically essentially is a slope of any misses. So yeah, all right. So the elevation, so the layout of the hole right here. So here's the tee box back over here. Now for the Walker Cup, I actually played at 519, so actually a little farther back than what these guys are going to play. I think he probably played maybe back here and he had a back hole location. But it goes over a ridge, back down, and then way back up. So, it's you're probably not going to get a good look of where the ball ends up from off the tee over here. But let's zoom in over here. So once it hits this little plateau over here, it's gradually back uphill. So about you hit to this bunker over here, and then it's pretty uphill from there. So as long as you get it to about 275 up here, you can run the ball out a little more. But unfortunately, you're going to lose about 8 yards of carry. It's not too extreme. So most guys should be able to, with a good drive, get it up to this top shelf over here. Now, here's the thing, though. It's not the straightaway elevation change that's the problem. It's definitely the how it is left to right. So at 275, pretty flat over here. But once you get a little past that, everything wants to start feeding downhill towards the right over here if you're in the center, or if you just hit it towards the right. So you can see over here, this is about 300 yards over here. On the left side, relatively flat, and then it gradually goes all the way back downhill. So it's about 12 feet left to right slope at about 300 yards and about a 325 over here. Oh, I want to get out of that view. Oh boy. It does this sometimes. Where did it put me? Oh, hang on. Am I in Asia right now? Nope, I'm in Central America. Okay. Sorry, people. We have a technical glitch. This is why this is not in podcast form, because sometimes Google Earth completely freaks out. All right, let's get back. This is embarrassing. Sorry, folks. All right. if this video podcast wasn't going long enough. All right. So you get the idea, though. You want to be over on the left side of this fairway over here. Now, there's only one Walker Cup point that I actually found here. It's from Norman Jong. He's a really long hitter, but he had about 227 up to the green over here. I suspect that that's probably a mishit. Maybe he hit the side of maybe he hit a really low tee shot, hit the side of the hill here. Otherwise, though, I probably would expect for most longer hitters, it is uphill here. So getting it up, if the fairways aren't really running a whole lot, probably 325, 330 or so is about the max is what you're going to do. So I have two little lines over here where the approach shot yards would be. So about right here, about 200 yards to the green. And then all the way downhill, down here, it's about 180. So it's a shorter approach shot to the green if you're downhill here, but you might have tree trouble. It's significantly uphill. It's definitely better to leave yourself a longer approach shot, but it's a flatter lie. You have a better angle to the green over here. So as far as the proximity range you're looking for, I mean, the fairways are really rolling and the marine layer doesn't really impact you a whole lot. I mean, probably 175 to 200 for most of your longer hitters. 200, 225 if you're a shorter hitter and you can barely get above the crest over here. If the marine layer is playing havoc, though, I mean, I probably expect everybody congregated over here. So, again, though, you're looking at a longer approach shot. You want to make sure you get over on the left side here. Okay, 14. Let's start getting through this pretty good. So this is a par 5, 625 yards, plays pretty significantly downhill. So here's what Shackelford has to say about the par 5. It's a long par 5 with the reward of shorting the hole by clearing the fairway bunkers. We'll talk about that a little bit. That's actually a good strategy. The fairway gently slopes right to left, but it's been narrow for the U.S. Open. I'll show you exactly where it's been narrowed over here. You can go for the green in two if you hit the fairway, but most better players are actually going to be aiming for the front bunker because I'll show you it's very difficult to fly the ball onto the green and get it to stay. There's a lot of trouble around that green that it's better probably just to bail in that bunker and trying to get up and down from there. The layup zone, if you miss in the rough here, you're probably not to the green, but the layup zone is not easy. There's a lot of undulation the last 140 yards to the green. The green is 37 paces deep and from left to center. It looks like it's back to front slope. It actually slopes away from the player because it's downhill. And you don't want to bail out left. You don't want to bail out right. You don't want to bail out long. It's a hard green complex. I saw a lot of guys really screw up this hole in the Walker Cup. But tee shot, so you're teeing up from this high spot in the property over here down to this area down here. This is relatively flat over here. All this right here, this is new rough. This was previously fairway. So actually, I have a bullet point here here's Mr. Scotty Scheffler over here. There's a couple, USA shots. I think this was Stuart Hagestad. That might have been Doc Redman. But this right here is Scotty Scheffler. Now, this was in Sunday singles. So the tee box was about 35 yards up from here. So he only hit it about 300 or so down the hill, and you're only getting about 5 yards of carry distance from the tee box. He's a little stronger now, so I would probably expect if he was teeing off and he hits the same location today, he's probably ended up about here. So you can probably count on Scotty Scheffler probably getting about 330, 335, probably about this area right here. Now, this is all rough, but you probably expect if he was going to go for the green too, he probably would be back here. A shorter hitter, though, probably going to be somewhere in this area right here. Now, it's 270 clear the corner of the bunker here, 300 carry over here. But again, like this is all rough over here. If you're sending your tee shot this way, I mean, you got tree trouble over here. You really got to play away from the bunkers. So I'm not really concerned about these cross bunkers over here. It's really only concern if you're a shorter hitter and maybe start the ball off right to left and you don't get it as good. But the fairway is definitely narrower over here. It's only about 33 yards between the bunker and the fairway here. It's a little wider over here, 40 yards over here. And then at 358 bottlenecks again at about 33 yards. So this is where he hit his approach shot from. I think he ended up in the bunker. Actually, I think he ended up left over here. Couple guys. This is the layup zone over here. This is Great Britain. They were about 120 in from here, about 80 in here from using the rough. What I do want to show you, though, is this green complex. So Stuart Hagestad, he's really tall. He ended up hitting his shot way down here. And he was actually jumping up and down to try to see the green over here. This is a horrible spot to be if you miss over here. If you miss long, this feeds all the way back down to, I think, a hole on the south course over here. This is also not a great area to be. So you can see why, if you are hitting your approach shot from way back here, bailing out in this bunker is perfectly fine. It means it's not going down here. It's not going to the left. This is where you're probably going to try and get guys get up and down from. So it's about 250, 275 from where Scotty Scheffler hit it to this bunker over here. That's basically your proximity lane, or zone. But otherwise, though, I mean, I'm not really looking for exact proximity on this hole. I'm looking for a guy who can hit it to this here and then get up and down. So really, around the green game and bunker play is more important to me on this hole than actual proximity. If you do have to lay up, though, you got to have a good wet shot. All right, 15th hole. This is going to be a very discussed hole this week. You can play at a lot of yardages. So this is a very short par 3. Par 3, 124 yards. Here's a Shackelford has to say about this hole. So be ready for anything from sand wedge to 8-iron on this hole. There's a small bump in the green. It's about right here. That basically divides the green into two sections. The toughest hole location is on the right side, right here. If you had a nice soft cut, you get to this, but as you can see, very narrow portion of this green right here. Any balls finishing above the hole can be some of the toughest putts on the golf course. The outer edges funnel all the way back towards the middle here. And there was an 80-yard shot, I think maybe on Saturday, that they might use again. So the yardage they played 133, 78, 139, 123. So it was actually Saturday singles where they used the 80-yard shot. It's pretty flat from the tee to the green, so you're not getting any elevation change. It's really just hit a short iron, nut up to a really difficult green complex over here. This is only about 9 yards deep right here. This is only about 22 yards wide over here. Just really small targets. If you do miss with a short iron and you end up these bunkers, like that's so difficult trying to get up and down, especially if the pin is right here on that 80-yard shot. Like, you might go bunker to bunker. You're probably better off just getting to the fat part of the green, taking your bogey and moving on. But that's that hole. Basically, the biggest storyline of that hole is it's going to play to a lot of yardages. All right, now we're going to get to a stretch of the golf course where everybody freaked out. I'll try and alleviate some of those freakouts. There's actually a ton of Walker Cup data as far as the tee shots and the approach shots these guys hit in the next 2 holes, or actually the next 3 holes, because most of the matches were ending at this point. They had a lot of cameras on them. I saw a lot of tee shots and a lot of pro shots on this hole. So there's a lot to parse through on this one. So this is a par 4, 542 yards. So again, freak out. Wow, 540-yard par 4. Woo, scary. Here's what Jeff Shackelford has to say about this. It's perched on a high point. A big draw is optimal on the tee shot, but don't get too cute. It's 255 yards to reach the fairway. So sorry, Zach Johnson. If you're playing in this, you might have some difficulty getting to the fairway. 340 over this left bunker over here. It's about 331 to get it over this bunker over here. But this is a huge miss over here. If you're missing way right, you're already in trouble if you're getting the ball over here, which we'll talk about once we get to the fairway over here. Drives pulled long and left go down a hill over here. Any drives bailing out right goes towards this grove of trees, and you're just blocked out from the green at that point. If the marine layer lifts, it'll play downwind, so we'll see if the marine layer lifts. The best angles to the green is a drive right down the middle or over the bunker. Basically, getting to about this range here, you take this bunker way off in the distance out of play. It's a large bowl-shaped green that's receptive and approaches the run in or play to the flag. Anything, if you miss the green, it's a really brutal up and down. It falls off to the left and right and rear of the green, and there's a subtle knob on 17 paces into the right side of the green. They use the funnel balls from the front right. So basically, if you have a really good caddy and you are creative, the approach shot, if you use that knob to your advantage, you can get the ball very close to the pin. All right, so let's show you why you don't need to really freak out about the yardage on this hole. So you're teeing off at a 412, and it goes significantly downhill to where a lot of guys are hitting their approach shots from. So look at all this data I have right here. Now, some of this is from the foursomes, either the foursomes or it's from the singles. Now, for the singles, which is everything in white, where you see Norman Jong and Cam Champ hit it way down here. This is actually about 160 yards to the green. So, but that was actually played at 495. On the foursomes, though, it was played at 532. So that's about where the hole's going to be played from. Now, it could play 495. You can see some guys push it all the way this way. But we're actually just going to dissect the ones highlighting in red. There's Maverick McNeely. There's Doc Redman. And there's Norman Jong. So you have McNeely, who actually took 3 wood on this hole to lay it short of the bunker. So he took 3 wood, and he had about 231 into the green over here. You had Doc Redman, who hit it about down the middle. He had 220 into his green. But then you have Norman Jong, who hit just a bomb, absolute bomb drive, hit the downslope, and just kept running. And he set up Colin Morikawa for a 185-yard shot from the fairway. And what do you think Morikawa did with that shot? He put it to 5 feet. So that was a hell of a team for the Walker Cup. But it goes to show that even though this is 542, like if you get a guy who bombs it out there and the fairway's really running firm, I mean, you can get it a 185-yard shot. It's not nearly as long as what it says it is. Now, if you're a shorter hitter like Redman, yeah, like that's going to be like 220, but like, even he would probably get it closer, a little farther out with technology. So as far as the proximity of this hole, I mean, it's probably 175 for 200 to a lot of longer hitters. Plays a lot shorter than what you think it would on a 542-yard hole. Probably 200, 225 for a shorter hitter. Or if it's playing a little softer, you're not getting a lot of rollout, and the marine layer exists, maybe it is 200, 225 for a longer hitter, maybe 225, 250 for a shorter hitter. That would not be ideal. At that point, I just want a longer hitter and get it as far as you can. If it's placed firm, though, if you get a shorter hitter hits it pretty good with their long irons, that's not bad. But, if you push it as far as you can up this hole, you can get, 175, 180 shot out of it. Now, they did add some rough, by the way. This was all fairway, so you could, if you missed it right, get it short of this bunker over here. Now you can't really do that. If you're in the rough over here, you're pretty much dead. In this bunker over here, you're dead. Even if you carry all this stuff over here, the ball is going to keep running and running. You're blocked out by trees. You're dead. So really, guys, just nut up, hit a really good tee shot down the middle. Or if you're a really longer hitter, because you get, 14, 50 yards extra carry, if you have a helping wind, carry over this bunker over here, you really short up the hole. So I know it's a lot of yardage on the scorecard, not as long as what you might think it would be. All right, 17th hole. So this unfortunately had a lot of bad data on it. So, and I'll get to the reasons why in a little bit. So this is a par 4, 520 yards. Again, people are freaking out about the long yardage of this, but again, plays very significantly downhill. Unfortunately, this is where Jeff Shackelford's commentary ends because he has not given out his descriptions of number 17, 18, but I saw a lot of these holes from the Walker Cup. I can basically describe it to you. Maybe not the greens itself, but tee to green, I can tell you where to hit it, where not to hit it. So let's pull up the elevation profile here. So again, you're teeing off at a very high spot, and then you're just teeing straight downhill to a fairway that's about 40 feet below you. So unfortunately, though, a lot of guys in the Walker Cup, and if you go back to the beginning of the video, they chose to play down the second fairway over here, which I guess I understand it from the standpoint of it's a safer tee shot, and these guys are amateurs, and if you hit it over the Barranca over here, you're basically dead. But like, this is a horrible angle to this green. It's shallow. You have 3 bunkers over here. Like, everybody was missing short and basically come out with bogey. Even Morikawa think he hits the apron over here, and he hit, I think, a pretty poor chip shot to bogey the hole too. So I would imagine the USGA is not going to let these guys play down the 17th. They're probably going to say everybody play it straight. But fortunately, though, on Sunday singles, we actually have some good data on this hole. Now, played a little longer for Sunday singles, played 532 for these guys, but we have Scotty Scheffler right over here. And we have Cam Champ who hit it way down there, but he was in the rough over here. So it's about 360 to this cross bunker over here. It is about like 30, 35 yards wide here. So pretty narrow landing zone here. Not a lot of room over here. If you hit the trees in the bank over here, you're gonna have a hard time getting to the green. Again, kind of like on hole number 8, though, you want to hit it towards the right side of the fairway over here. So let's just measure where Scotty Scheffler hit his tee shot from. So I don't know if he mishit it or not, or maybe he just wasn't as long of a hitter back then. But he had about 210 into the green, which means from the 532 hole location, which, you know what? Actually, that's probably a pretty good poke. Yeah, like 320. So, yeah, he hit driver. He hit it down to about this area right over here. Now, Scotty Scheffler nowadays with 12 extra yards and his strength, he's probably hitting it more closer to if you get a lot of fairway roll. This also is pretty flat over here. There's not a lot of elevation change. You're probably getting about 350. Cam Champ hooked his drive, hit it about over here, though, but he had about 180 into the green. Horrible angle, though. So, again, you can see how you don't want to hit over the left. You want to hit over the right here. So, if you're proximity, if you're a longer hitter, you know, you can have 175 to 200 as long as the marine layer is cooperating and running firm. If not, though, you're probably pushing more towards like 200. For a shorter hitter, you're probably hitting about 200, 225 in this green. Again, longer approach shots, but this isn't like the 250, 240 shot that I think people were thinking of. Like, you know, it's definitely for a longer hitter, it's manageable. You just really got to make sure you're on the correct side of the fairway over here. If you really are over here, like it's just there, you have no room on this green over here. You see the bunkers guarding in front for basically preventing anybody from coming in from the left. The green slopes back towards the barranca over in the front over here. It basically feeds back to this middle section around this plateau right here. But the challenge is the tee shot. Make sure you're on the correct side, and it's a longer approach shot. Okay, number 18. Again, we have a lot of data points for guys who hit approach shots in the Walker Cup. So, and we have some changes from the USGA. This, you know, so it's par 4, 492. Again, no commentary from Shackelford, but I can describe this hole for you. So we're going back up the hill. Runs parallel to the first hole. So as you can see here, and it just goes straight uphill all the way to the hole. So let's zoom over and let's swing around to where all these Walker Cuppers were hitting their approach shots from. So the ones where I have names in them. So this is from Saturday foursomes and Sunday singles. All these were the ones where I have names is Sunday singles. So you have Scheffler over here. You had Robert McIntyre, who was taken on Cam Champ. You had Doc Redman over here. I think another GBI guy. You can see how short these GBI guys was. Like the USA guys just had so much firepower, which actually might be an indication of what you need here. If you're really short, they had a really tough time with this golf course because they were so short. All these USA guys, I mean, they're better golfers, but they just made this so much shorter. So it probably just goes initial lean. I mean, length is probably an advantage of this place, but regardless, so you see all this new rough right over here. You know, Scotty Scheffler was in the fairway on his approach shot. This is all rough now. So if he hit this over to here, that wouldn't be good. Now on Walker Cup Sunday, this again played at 501 for singles, so about 10 yards shorter, or 10 yards longer than what it's going to be. I mean, they could play for 501 for one of the rounds, but for purposes like this, basically put his tee shot back 10 yards, and it's in the rough, so it probably would be around back here where it landed. It's only 30 yards wide, so they really shrunk the landing zone. So if you give these guys an extra 10 yards from where they hit in the Sunday singles, you're losing about 8 yards of carry based on where they teed it from. So let's start just with a couple of, of where they were hitting from. So let's start with Doc Redman. He hit it to the right side over here. He had a really long approach shot into the green. He had about 211 in the green. That was actually measured by Julie Inkster too, so I know it's exactly 211. This is about where he was. Push him up about 10 yards though, 200 because of the tee box, maybe because he's a little longer now, maybe about 193. Yeah, Cam Champ over here hit a bomb tee shot, had only about 186 to the green, push him about another 10 yards or so from the tee box. You're probably about 178 or so. Ball stop in the rough though. So that's that. And then Scotty Scheffler here, he had 187 to the middle of the green. Push him up here about 175 or so. But again, it depends on the marine layer. If it's hovering over everything and you can't carry it, you're probably actually having it about where these guys are hitting their approach shots from. So just overall, though, I mean, again, probably at 175 to 200 up the hill, plays more like 200, tough closing hole. You're closing with 3 straight holes with a really long approach shots. But again, a lot is kind of mysterious about how long this golf course will actually play, if there's a marine layer or if it's soft. We'll see. So, all right, let's get rid of the screen right here. Let's go back to this. Wow, this is an hour and 45. I'm sorry this went so long, but thank you for the 3 people who are actually still watching this. So let's actually share my screen one more time. And let's just summarize all the proximity buckets. And there we go. Okay. So again, I need to emphasize that this is an estimate where I think the approach shots are going to come from. And this is basically a guess. If the marine layer persists and it's a lot softer and slower than what we might think it is, a lot of these proximities are going to skew heavier this way. It's going to play a lot longer. If it plays a lot firmer and the marine layer lifts, then it'll play a lot shorter. So here, I mean, the most critical range here, and I kind of highlight it in the holes over here, is from 175 to 225. It's 44% of your approach shots. So, and it's 8 shots in the round. And the reason why I say this is the most critical range right here is these are most of your tougher par 4s that are just really difficult approach shots. So this encompasses number 2 over here, the longer par 4. This covers hole number 5, which is uphill. You got to be on the correct side of the fairway. It also covers the 4th hole too, the par 3. You got to hit a good shot there. This covers the hole number 8. But you have to be in really good position off the tee in order to get that approach shot. If you're not, it's more of a layup. This covers hole number 13. Again, a really tough approach shot up the hill, long approach shot. And then your closing stretch here, 16, 17, 18. These are big boy US Open approach shots. And it tends to be the big boys who win this thing. And they tend to be best from this range over here. Now, if it's playing slower and the marine layer persists, this will skew a little heavier. But regardless, though, you probably can see the point. A lot of really long approach shots. Sure, you have your flip wedges. This is hole number 6. This is hole number 10 and 12. This is hole number 3. But your really more difficult approach shots are from longer range. So that's where I'm going to focus most of my time on. Especially when I get more information about what the turf conditions actually are. If it's a little firmer, it's going to play a little shorter. Regardless, though, I think just targeting 175 to 225, those are your toughest approach shots you're going to see, or just long approach shots in general. That's usually the prevailing theme at most US Opens anyways. That's what gets it done. That's what we're looking for. So let's stop sharing this. Let's get back here. All right. So overall conclusions of what I talked about. I mean, a lot is going to depend on how the weather conditions are. A lot's going to depend on the turf conditions. As far as comp courses go, I mean, this is difficult. There's a lot of things. There's been a lot of golf courses that have been kind of float around so far this week. If it's really firm, some places that kind of come to mind. I mean, Shinnecock Hills right off the bat. with how wide it was, and then spots where the U.S. Open or the USGA kind of shrunk the fairways. I mean, that's exactly what they did here. A lot of just firm, difficult green sites with tight lies around the green. Definitely Shinnecock if it's firm. And even if it's not firm, probably a good reference point for this golf course. Carnoustie was really firm too. So that might be one if we're getting reports of the ball's really rolling, it's fiery. That's a good one to look at. I mean, you kind of saw a lot too where you got to bounce the ball up to the green. It's very similar to an Open Championship style tournament. So I think Carnoustie would be a great reference point too. Pinehurst was pretty firm and fast in 2014. It's going back a long ways, but that you could look at that too. Chambers Bay, obviously, that was super firm. That had a lot of land movement. You could use that too. Even Murfield Village from a couple weeks ago. I mean, that was super firm, relatively wide fairways. If you're missing the wrong spots of the fairway, it was really damaging. I mean, this has really thick rough. If you miss a really wide fairway, it's got the Barranca too. Maybe that's a good comp. If you got the marine layer comes in, it kind of wrecks everything. Then it plays a little bit more like Erin Hills. That's another, piece of property with a lot of significant elevation changes. Pretty long too, but it played relatively soft, that tournament, and relatively benign. And that's what this tournament could be too. If, the marine layer persists and it's not as fiery, it could definitely be Erin Hills. Or you just take a lot of the California majors. I mean, Pebble and Harding Park and Torrey Pines are not a great comp to this place as far as the layout, but all of them were impacted by the marine layer, and it played a little softer. And so there's some guys who, when it gets a little softer, are a little better, and when it's firmer, it separates the men from the boys. So you can look at those if the marine layer looks like it's going to be a bit of an issue. As far as width of the fairways, I mean, definitely Shinnecock, Erin Hills. I mean, those are really wide fairways, a lot of wide corridors, but a lot of significant elevation change or undulation of the fairways where you got to be on the correct side of the fairway sometimes, otherwise we'll roll in really bad places. That's a comp there. For shot making ability, as far as bouncing the ball up to the green or just shaping the ball left to right, right to left. You saw a lot of that. I talked about a lot about that, about tee shots and approach shots. I mean, the Open Championship, bouncing the balls up to the green if it plays really firm. Augusta, especially with the elevation changes too. Riviera, that's where I think Riviera would be closely compared to this place as far as, you see guys who hit the ball both ways, shot making. That's a good comp. As far as elevation, uneven lies, Augusta, Kapalua, I think that's what the no laying up guys kind of compare this place to, especially on hole number 5, just straight uphill. You just got to kind of hit it. A lot of side hill lies. I think those are good places to look at, even though Kapalua is a birdie fest now. Just being used to hit iron shots from various distances from uneven lies, I think that's going to be a big plus this week. And then agronomy-wise, I mean, Southern Hills is the perfect example. Bermuda rough and fairways, pine or bent grass greens. But just anywhere with tight Bermuda lies in general. I mean, Pinehurst, you can go look at that because it is trickier to do short games off of tight Bermuda. Some guys are better at it, some guys aren't. We know who's better and not. You got Kapalua, which is a little slower. I wouldn't love that for an around the green comp, but just usually most of that for mostly uneven lies with their approach shots. Memorial Park, though, I think that's actually not bad if you're looking for guys who are pretty good with tight Bermuda lies around really undulated greens. That's a good comp. Unfortunately, not a lot of guys have really played that a whole lot. But if you're focusing mostly on short game performance, that's a good reference point. You could also use the 2017 PGA at Quail Hollow. That was all Bermuda at that point. That had really thick Bermuda rough too. But again, I don't love it from a golf course perspective, but if you want just general performance on Bermuda around the green, that's a reference point. And then the greens itself, I mean, Brookline on hole number 2, but I think they're more closely aligned to like a Shinnecock or an Augusta National. So my favorite comps, just kind of what I looked at, I mean, Shinnecock, Erin Hills, it kind of depends a little bit of what the turf conditions are and what the weather's going to be. If it's a little firmer, it'll play more like a Shinnecock. If it's a little softer, more like an Erin Hills. But I think both bring a lot to the table as far as things you're looking for. I mean, Augusta, as far as the elevation changes, same thing with a Kapalua. I think those are good comps. But I think any of the ones I kind of referenced above or before, those are good comps. And then just in general, who I kind of like for this place. Well, I mentioned Shinnecock Hills. I mentioned Erin Hills. I mean, Brooks Koepka won both those places. Seems like he's at a point where he's firing all cylinders, and you get him on firm, difficult golf courses. I mean, but Erin Hills also played soft. It seems like he's very variable. I don't know if what he is now is great for this place, but if you just want low-hanging fruit, that he's won at Shinnecock, won at Erin Hills, those are the golf courses that were kind of thrown around as really close comps. I mean, that's great. I mean, obviously, Scotty Scheffler, with how well he's hitting at tee to green, he's going to be in the mix, especially when it values accurate placement off a tee combined with his length and experience playing at this place. That's a big edge. Unfortunately, he's like 8-1, but of Rory and Rahm and Scheffler, I mean, I like Scheffler the best of all three. I think he's better fit for this place for a lot of reasons I'll talk about next week, but it's definitely Scheffler for me. You can go with Hovland, who just won at Memorial. Pretty good playing off of Bermuda, really good with the long irons. He also has a good combination of length and accuracy that can work here too. You're always going to go back to Cantlay and Schauffele, even though I don't want to, but you got the California narrative. Cantlay used to have the scoring record here before Max Homa broke in the Pac-12 championship. He lists this as one of his favorite courses. I don't know. It concerns me how little he is to actually be in the mix to win. I think he'll play well. It might just be placement for me at this point. I think maybe the benign conditions could help him. But if you look at some of the other majors with the Marine layer, played a little softer, he was nowhere relevant. I think of the two, though, Xander probably is the one I like the best, even though I said I probably would never bet him a major again. But look, there's a lot of really important shots that require a draw. He can do that. He has really good history on firm golf courses, Shinnecock, Carnoustie. He's right in the mix at Carnoustie, at least. He's done well at all the California majors. He top 10 at Harding Park, top 10 at Pebble Beach, top 10 at, or maybe top 12 at Torrey Pines, but he was in the mix there. That all was affected by marine layer. So I know he's pretty diversible, or he can work in either softer conditions with the marine layer or really fiery conditions if it's Shinnecock or Carnoustie. Obviously, really good at Kapalua, really good at Augusta, so really good with golf courses with uneven lies. I can't believe I'm going to actually talk myself into Xander this week. God, my co-host is going to be really disappointed in me. He's going to yell at me on Sunday for that. I mean, you got Spieth. I mean, won at Chambers Bay, shot maker, maybe some open championship type of vibes to this place. Good at Carnoustie. That was really firm. Good at Chambers Bay, really firm. Good at Murrayfield Village a couple weeks ago, really firm conditions. Good at Augusta, good at Kapalua. That's definitely in play. If Morikawa was healthy, I mean, he played really good at the Walker Cup. I am concerned, though, about his ability, if this is going to be really long. I mean, he was definitely aided by having a good partner in Norman Jong. We'll see what happens with he hits almost everything left to right. There's a lot of shots you got to hit right to left. I don't know if he can do that here with just his own ball. I mean, DJ's really good in firm conditions, but he's really bad at first two majors. Cam Smith, though, I'm definitely interested in Cam Smith just with the short game magic. If it is really firm too, like think about, Royal Melbourne, really firm conditions, a lot shorter, but just similar concepts as far as around the green play, firm conditions, really good at Augusta. He's won at Kapalua, so uneven lies there. Really like a Cam Smith this week, fifth at Chambers Bay. That can work too. Fitzpatrick working with firmer conditions as well. He has a decent track record, some of those ones, and just really good at getting up and down. Tommy Fleetwood, great at Erin Hills, great at Shinnecock. I don't know if he's going to win, but I mean, he's playing good. This golf course seems to fit him a little bit. You like him. You like a Justin Rose, Hideki, pretty good on some firmer courses too. That's in play. Patrick Reed, play well at Shinnecock and Erin Hills. Good at Augusta, good at Kapalua. You do that. Joaquin Neiman, even. That's a name. I mean, he hasn't really done much on live, I think, lately, but he was okay at Kapalua. He was good at Augusta this year. That could work too. So, I mean, there's a lot of guys. I think it really comes down to just how the weather conditions are going to be. But I think for me, like as far as I'm picking this week, it's definitely going to be more on feel, especially with a lot of the unknowns. But yeah, I have a couple of more days to think about it. So we'll see. So I know this went very long. Thank you for sticking with me if you watch this. We'll put bookmarks in the video as far as what holes we're talking about. But hope you actually learned a little bit. Hope you got some valuable insight into this golf course. I will be back on Sunday with my co-host to talk about some other stuff. So with that, have a good night.